Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm here with another episode of the Plant-Free MD. And today I have a very special guest who had me on his podcast, which was, I had a great time there. It's my friend Tomer, all the way from Israel. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very, very well. So,
good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, good afternoon. Evening. So for people who haven't come across you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so my story is my life story led me to what I'm doing. So it's I'm going to become a clinical nutritionist, and I'm type 1 diabetic for 20 years now, 20 plus, like 21 years. And I had one moment like 7 years ago that I got to a really low point that I had a ketoacidosis, and until it's like my life, they're divided for two until this moment that I had a ketoacidosis and after. And only after that, I started to realize that this amazing power that food has on everything that I do. And the more I dived into, I got to the point that I just realized that carbs are the problems they make all the problems in this disease. And the more I dived in, I got to, in the beginning, I got to Dr. Richard K. Bernstein, I'm sure you heard of. And He was like the first footprint in my journey that led me to all of this low carb world. And ever since, it was like 7 years ago, ever since I never stopped developing and researching, and every day I make it better. And I can say like quite surely that I know how to control my blood sugar today. And I got to the point that it's very predictable, and that's what gave me the power over this disease. And as you can say also the winning, because I won against this disease when I managed to predict it. And then it got really easy. And today I will become a clinical nutritionist, and I pass forward everything that I learned, everything that I've been to. I have I accompanying type 1 diabetics, many young people, but also elderly, and some type 2s also got to my everyday work as naturally. And that's it. I walk the walk and I talk the talk also.
Yeah, well, that's good. And so what exactly is your diet now?
So today it's mostly like 5 years now. It's mostly meat and red meat. And I had some experiments with myself. I had times that I went more like meat and organs. I tried I think I tried everything, and eventually today I got to the point that red meat is really the base of my diet. I add some when I don't have. I personally don't have reactions to high fat milk products. So for me that's fine also. But that's only like the addings. The main part is the red meat, of course. And organs I take like as a supplement. It's my supplement, so it's like every other month or something like that. But I'm not really concerned about that. Yeah, basically red meat. Some vegetables I can eat when I tolerate when I cook them, but it's not. It's also like maybe once in 2 months.
Yeah, and that's for pleasure somehow. You like the vegetables?
Yeah, I don't really like them, to be honest. It's more like I tolerate them. And it's like, family events and some stuff, things like events like that. So you get to that point that you put it on your plate, but it's not anything that I need.
No, so it's not like you go out of your way for the vegetables. It's just if it comes up, you're like, all right, well, maybe I'll have a bit.
Yeah, not from my side.
Yeah, no, that's funny. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products that will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys.
And so since then, you've had very good control over your diabetes. Is that right? And so do you still have to take medication and insulin as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that a lot because everywhere in my website and when I talk in my Hebrew channel, so I say always that I manage I manage to control my diabetes completely. And then everyone say, okay, but you still take insulin. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that is correct. But insulin is not a medication. It's a hormone that I take from another source that you and me talk right now, and your body, your pancreas is producing it and releasing it to the blood. So I take it from another source, but it's not like a biological medication. So, yeah. So I just got to a very low physiological dose ever since I got to the low carb. And really, Dr. Bernstein was the one that the book is behind me. And it's like, he's the one that got me into this world. And it was amazing for me that there is like just a method and it's a practice that you can, if you know it, so you can control diabetes. And it's something that before that, I always been told that I'm going to suffer from complications. It was like a known fact. Like I went all of my life with this feeling, and also the everyday feeling that just I was more tired. And also, yeah, ever since that moment, my blood glucose got normalized completely, like to low levels of non-diabetic. And just I have fun with it. Like I tried a lot of stuff since then, but in the low carb limits. So since that moment, I never got higher in my blood glucose.
Nice. Yeah, that's something that I've noticed in people with type 1 and type 2 as well, if they're insulin dependent, is that your need for insulin just goes to a very minimal level, and you just have a background dose of low level of the long-acting insulin, and that seems to be enough. And you don't need to take the short-acting insulin before every meal and before every drink or anything like that, because and you don't have to play this balancing act with your blood sugar and your insulin levels.
Yeah, but you do have to take the fast. You do have to dose your meals, but it's becoming simpler. It's not. There is no like freebies in diabetes. That's what I understood. That it's everything that you eat will have an effect on your blood glucose. When you eat a big steak as a non-diabetic person, so your body will produce some insulin for that and will release some insulin in order to cover the high amount of protein. So I see it in my blood glucose, but the big difference is when I do eat a big steak, so it's really slow, and it's predictable because it's slow, and it's not the high processed carbohydrates that you hit, and you can hit to 200 or 300, and there's no way to control that rise. Like you can't reach that rise with insulin. You can't win in that battle. And with a steak, and any protein, also eggs, or it doesn't matter, or chicken. So it's really easy. It's like you can predict it. You inject a really slow acting insulin, and that's simple.
Yeah. Well, it sounds much more convenient anyway, and you're not having to have as many slip ups because it is predictable. You're not necessarily underdosing or overdosing with insulin, which can be a serious problem. People have slightly too much insulin, they get hypoglycemic, and they can become very hurt by that, and it can be very, very dangerous. So just having that regularity and consistency and predictability of your blood sugar must be much more safe and convenient.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you have too much insulin in your blood and it's too fast acting, so everything becoming unpredictable. And then, as you say, if you go out for a walk after a meal that is high in carbohydrates, as a diabetic, you almost 100% you will experience some hypoglycemia, and it's as they say, it's a roller coaster that you can't really control.
Yeah, sort of out of control, and you're just trying to stay, behind it as best as you can. So yeah, and then especially for type 2 diabetes as well. I mean, type 1 diabetes, there are some animal studies looking at a fasting mimicking diet, or fasting certain periods of the day or certain times of the month, and having showing that they can actually regrow some of the beta islet cells in these rats and things like that, which is interesting. They've just sort of started that with human trials, but with the amount of people that I've seen that do ketogenic diet or carnivore diet and do fast and go back and forth with type 1, I haven't really seen that. I haven't really seen them be able to recover that. So but it might be interesting if they could find a protocol that could stimulate those stem cells to regrow that. But either way, even if they don't, it certainly makes it a lot easier to manage anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely a solution, but it's not like it's not a medicine. It's not like a cure. It's a solution. But there is all this Paleo Medicina. It's the guys there from Hungary, and they have this the protocol that they took a type 1 diabetic and they put him on a low carb, really next to the burst of the type 1 of his type 1 diabetes, and he got his beta cells got back to work because probably they caught it like really next to the attack.
Really, yeah.
So there you can save the situation if you're on the so-called honeymoon, like of the type 1 diabetics, that it's still their pancreas is still under attack and is still producing some insulin.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense too. There might be more to recover at that point. And so, yeah, it is interesting with type 1 diabetes. There's like, there was one study that showed that like mothers that ate more gluten during pregnancy, their kids were twice as likely to have type 1 diabetes later on. So there's a lot of weird interactions here, and a lot of these, plant antigens seem to have a lot more effect on us than we realize. People just don't respect these things nearly enough, and we're causing knock-on effects generations away. So it's not as cut and dry as people think, and there's a lot of subtle and hidden risks in these sorts of things. But the good news is that people are starting to figure that out, which is good.
Yeah, but I believe there is a lot. It's not like anything that I can show you in studies, but I believe now after 21 years that there is a connection to the mother, like the infancy, the time of infancy, and I think that there is a relation between the artificial breast milk that mothers use today more and more, and to autoimmune diseases of any kind. And I think type 1 is a big one, but a lot of other autoimmune diseases today, they say autoimmune, but almost every disease can be autoimmune. It's like the body, it's a failure of the immune system in some way. So I think there is a stronger connection there.
I would imagine so, yeah, because a lot of these things are linked to food as well, and especially with what the mother eats. So and what is the infant is fed. So there was a study that looked at breastfed versus bottle-fed kids, and the kids that were bottle-fed had much higher rates of autism than the breastfed kids. And so, okay, well, some people will, sort of express milk and store it and feed their kids in a bottle if they're, working or whatever. That's perfectly normal. They didn't distinguish between that and formula fed, but the majority of people who do bottle feed are bottle feeding with formula. And I would expect there's a serious difference there. Because obviously, I don't think the bottle is necessarily causing much of an effect unless you got these different plastics that are going in there and causing problems in the kids, which is possible. But I think the main difference would be breastfed versus formula. And that formula is going to have a lot more sugar. They put in a lot of, high fructose corn syrup, because it tastes good. The kid gets addicted to it and they want more and more and more. And they drink more of that product, just like Coca-Cola or something else. So,
exactly.
Yeah, and so there's all these carbs and sugar and stuff that would not exist in mother's milk, and it has hopefully the right nutrients as well. But there's something different there. It's not mother's milk, and you do see this difference in the development of those kids as a result of that.
Absolutely, we talked about it also on my podcast. That Weston A. Price, he went to research all of that, and he made like a real life research. And it's true that the tribes and everywhere in the world, like the healthiest people on this planet, they cherish the time of infancy and pregnancy. And that's obvious. Like it's kind of, for me, it sounds weird now that we are not doing it in the West. We let the mothers go work like while they are pregnant and in some places. And, you know, it's true that in infancy, I will ask forgiveness for my mother, but I think in my story, there is a relation to that synthetic artificial breast milk. And I would say that also it's like, as you said, autism a lot, and it has to do with vitamin D deficiency, and it's hard to say what was before, what came before, like but I think it's the infancy starting, and then there is like maybe a lack of vitamin D, and then when you have a lack of vitamin D, so you are more susceptible to a lot of things, and so on and so on. It gets
I think there's a lot of things going on there, you know, and it's going to be difficult to unravel all the exact processes, which will be an interesting job for someone else because I'm not entirely interested. But you know, I think the main take home is you eat something that you're not designed to eat, and you get things that don't go to plan. You know, you have your designs, your blueprints, that's fine, but if you just start ad-libbing, you're not going to get the same structure at the end of the story. So it's something that we need to pay a lot more attention to. And regardless of the interactions and the mechanisms, it is happening. And you know, it's easier for people to do because you can get so caught up in the minutiae, and you can argue both ways very cogently. So people are like, okay, well, what am I supposed to believe? Well, if you go to first principles, you go to the base of the pyramid, and you just say, okay, what are we? You know, what kind of animal are we? What is our natural diet? What were we eating 50,000 years ago? What were we eating 200,000 years ago and beyond? And you look at that, which we have actually quite good evidence for, that we were just predominantly eating meat when we were able to, that, you know, that's what we should be eating. And that's what is going to give us optimal health, because we're giving our body what we are designed to get, and we're not giving it a bunch of things we're not designed to get, and we don't have the capabilities to unravel. And so regardless of what those things do to us, they're doing something. And so you just have to go to that base of the pyramid and say, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? I'll just let my body get on with it after that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And then there is this question, what toxins we add to that evolution in the past 100, 200 years, and maybe even since the agricultural revolution, like 10,000 years. And we know that it's we added stuff that we don't need, like as they say, anti-nutrients, and we don't eat the good nutrients. So that's a recipe for a disaster. And I think that when you add to that this delicate process of infancy, and a boy in the a baby in the first days of his life. So of course he's the most vulnerable that he will ever be. That's obvious. And when you give this child, I know that in my country, I'm sure that in the US and in Australia it's the same. The artificial breast milk, they full of seed oils, you know, they full of everything that you wouldn't imagine that a baby needs, and anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, you know, it's a bit insane to me, you know, they're saying that we can decide what's better for an infant than mother's milk. How are you going to do that? You know, that is perfectly designed and adapted for that baby. And maybe the mother's diet can certainly affect that. And, you know, and we see that. We see, you know, there have been a number of stories in recent years of vegan mothers breastfeeding their child and the kids dying of malnutrition because they're just not getting the right nutrients because mom doesn't have the right nutrients available. And God knows what else. Maybe there's other things that are sort of causing problems in that as well. But it's tragic, you know, someone who's breastfeeding their child and the child dies, you know, because they're not able to provide the nutrients that they need. But if the mother's eating what they're supposed to eat, that breast milk should be perfect. And so for them to decide, well, we know saturated fat and cholesterol are bad, therefore we're going to substitute that with polyunsaturated fats from these seed oils that did not exist even 100 years ago, certainly didn't exist 50,000 years ago. So how can they be what we're designed to eat? they didn't exist when we were designed. So that can't be the case. And they're substituting those in, and they're taking out other sources of nutrients and calories, and they say, oh, well, we'll replace this with sugar because it's just an empty calorie. It just doesn't matter. It's just free calories. No, that's not the case. They actually cause harm. So that's a bit ridiculous for them to suggest that they can design something that's better than healthy breast milk. That's insane.
That's crazy. Yeah. Breast milk, it's like it's nature's masterpiece. It's like there is anything that the baby needs, like in high amounts, in anything you need to develop an immune system and to build tissues and all. It's like it's really a masterpiece. And when you decide to give up on that and to give anti-nutrients to that delicate process of life, that's absolutely insane, of course.
Yeah. And you think about saying that saturated fat, cholesterol are bad for you, and yet you look at every single nutrition source for baby animals, right? Be it in the egg, like the yolk, or in milk for mammals. All of them contain high amounts of saturated fat and cholesterol.
Yeah.
How does that work? It's just like fat and cholesterol cause heart disease, cause cancer, cause diabetes. So why aren't all animals, all mammals, all birds, why aren't they just turning into bowls of cancer and heart disease as infants? Why not? That was in that documentary What the Health, which was just an absolute disaster of a ball of lies. I was so angry watching this thing. And
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, one of them was saying, they're like, oh my God, people will eat eggs. There's all this cholesterol and fat, like all these building blocks that, to make a baby chicken. You eat that, it clogs your. I was like, you just said it. You just said it. These are the building of life. These are things you need to form animal life. And what? It causes cancer and heart disease. Does it? Then why doesn't the chicken just grow up to be just a lump of tumor cells? Grows up to be a healthy little chick, right?
Yeah.
So the thought process is quite lacking there, because they're in their own sentence. It's internally inconsistent. They're in their own sentence. They're disproving what the point they're trying to make. And you could look at breast milk. All mother's milk is very high in fat and cholesterol. You look at like whales and things like that. Something like 50% fat or something like that. Like a really, really high proportion is fat. And that's because they need to grow blubber and all that. No, they just need energy. They're a big animal. They're growing very quickly, and they need a lot of energy and they need a lot of nutrition. So fat and cholesterol are nutrition. That's what your body is made of. That's what your body runs on. You can turn that. That's hard currency. You can turn that into other things. You can turn that into blood sugar, into glycogen in your muscles and your liver, and into ketones, which then develops your brain and your neurons and and myelinates your nerve cells. So these are terribly important molecules and nutrition sources. And so how can that be that this is so toxic to us? If that's literally what all babies are provided with to grow into healthy examples of animals.
Yeah, I think that's a misunderstatement of a simple physiology. That's they use like a bit also terminology that they said in the 50s and all, like Ansel Keys and everything. They told people fat will cause you to build fat in your blood veins, and then it's like people it makes sense for them. They say, okay, when I eat fat, I get the fat inside my blood veins. So it's like it's kind of like a genius marketing strategy. But if you really understand physiology and you know that these people around the world, like even in Georgia and these countries, so they eat the animal because it's intuitively, they don't have any degree in nutrition. I went to study nutrition, but for me, sometimes it sounds weird that I need to have a degree in nutrition science in order to tell people what to eat, because you think about these people like in the mountains of Georgia or in other places that they live long life, like Okinawa in Japan and all. So they didn't study anything, just the grand ancestors led this idea that you need animals in order to survive, because it's obvious, because it's your tissues. It's like you don't even need to explain it. It's just it's obvious.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You're trying to build and maintain animal tissue, and so that an easy source of that is eating other animal tissue. It's very hard to turn plant tissue into animal tissue. There was, that golden era bodybuilder, Gironda. He wrote books on nutrition and what you should eat and how you should train and all these sorts of things. And the guy had one of the best physiques ever, right? And before steroids, really. And he was saying that there was like a story, like someone talked to him, say, okay, well, hey, there's these new books out on nutrition. These guys are saying you should eat this and you should do this. What do you think? Have you read them? What do you think of their whatever? Do you follow them? Whatever. And he was just like, I haven't read anything about nutrition that, wasn't, about people that have been alive in the last 50,000 years. Right. Because like, that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in how we developed, how we started. That's our origin. That's what we should be eating. That's what we're supposed to be eating. And so if we weren't eating it 50,000 years ago, I don't want to know about it. So I don't waste my time listening to anybody on nutrition that's, just coming up with new ideas now. The only thing that matters to me is what we were eating 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, 2,000,000 years ago. It's the same. It's consistent throughout the whole time. It's animals. We're eating animals and fatty animals. We're going after megafauna. Again, we're going after elephants and mastodon that had a lot of fat. And that's why we went after them, because we require more fat than other carnivores do. All carnivores need fat. All animals need fat, even herbivores. That's what they break down cellulose into and turn it into short chain fatty acids. So they get the majority of their calories from fat. Fat makes the animal kingdom go. And so we're not able to turn grass into fat. So we need to eat the animal that is able to turn grass into fat. Pretty simple. So
yeah, true.
And so, if we weren't eating this 100,000 years ago, we shouldn't be eating it now. That's my take on this. And that's sort of my impression of all these different foods, like, well, are artificial sweeteners all that bad for you? I'm like, well, whether they are or not, I have my opinion on that, but I don't really care at the end of the day, because they didn't exist 50,000 years ago. We certainly weren't eating them 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago or 500,000 years ago, when our early ancestors were eating the thing that turned us into Homo sapiens today. So that's the only thing that I care about. And so if I see a product and it's just like, well, that didn't exist 50,000 years ago, I don't want anything to do with it. Animals existed 50,000 years ago. I'll eat animals.
That's a good approach, but I totally agree, and I know but you know it as well that today it's you should know who to listen to sometimes, because when I saw, back in the days when I watched the Game Changers and all that, so people sometimes they claim a lot of things also about our evolution that they said there. I think that the Spartan warriors, they were vegans or something like that, and they have also like the blue zones theory that they used to say that the blue zones, they are mostly vegan, or they eat only eggs, something like that. So yeah, for me it makes a lot of sense, because just I think that every society that is a remain of our ancestors, they eat in any way like animal products.
Yeah. So yeah, in Game Changer they talk about the Roman gladiators, and so this gets romanticized. The movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe and all these sorts of things, where they get all these ripped guys that are in the gym and for the movies usually on steroids or something like that. And so they're like, oh wow, those gladiators are ripped. Oh, they were just eating plant-based. They weren't just eating plant-based, but they were referred to as the grain eaters. And I studied classical Roman Greece. I'm probably one of the last people that actually had a classical education. And yeah, they were called the grain eaters because they ate a lot of grain. That was not to make them ripped like the movies. That was actually to make them fat. They wanted to put on a layer of fat so that there was more padding between a sword and their internal organs or a major artery. So that was actually a bit of arm protection. So if they got a stab or a slash or something like that, that wouldn't go in as far, and there'd be more fat and padding, so it'd be less likely to hit something important. That's why they did it. Also,
Interesting.
they were not necessarily getting all the best food, but that was it. And I actually learned that years before I came across that vegan argument. And so as soon as someone said that, I'm like, no, like that's a complete misrepresentation of historical fact. And this is something that people can look up. This is not hidden. But that's the thing, people don't look it up. They just say, oh wow, oh, they ate grain. Oh, that they must have been it. Okay, well, Genghis Khan, the Mongol horde, they only ate meat, and these guys were way bigger than everyone else. They were way fitter, way healthier. All the historical records of this and books written about them were all talking about how these guys were just physical specimens, much better fed. They were fighting against peasant armies that were just eating gruel and had stunted bones and short stature and messed up teeth, and weren't as healthy, weren't as robust, had to eat 4 times a day or 3 times a day. And the Mongols didn't. They went 5 days without eating, just warring up and down countryside, and then just ate 10 pounds of horse meat and did it again. And they were talking how much healthier they were, how much more vigorous they were, how much taller they were, how much more muscular they were. And so, you're completely ignoring that. It's the largest empire that's ever existed, contiguous empire, continuous empire that's ever existed, only eclipsed in land mass by the British Empire at its peak. And that was, all over the place, because that was a naval power, right? Whereas the Mongol Empire was just one big chunk, right? Yeah. And so they did that on a purely carnivorous diet, and they controlled the largest empire that's ever existed in one location on a purely carnivore diet. So, you have to have cultivation and crops to make cities and have civilization. Like, largest civilization that's ever existed was purely carnivorous. And so a lot of these things break apart once you start looking at them, start poking holes in them. So the gladiators one, that's just nonsense. And they know it. They know it's nonsense. They're just trying to manipulate people and conflate the slave gladiators at the time, who were eating grains in order to become fatter, so that they could protect themselves. Also, they were poor. They were slaves. They were fed what they were fed.
Yeah, they were poor. Actually, that's interesting. It's like a bit like ancient Egypt, that they said they also were based, like their diet, a lot of grains and corn.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of wheat and grains. Yeah, and
because they were poor, like most of them, like unless you're a king or royalty.
Yeah, they were, and people say that we look at the mummies in ancient Egypt, and they found that these pharaohs, look, they had signs of atherosclerosis. That's probably because they were the rich ones; they could afford meat and fat and things like that. In fact, no, because it wasn't just the pharaohs that were mummified. Basically, everyone was mummified. It's thought that there are more mummies in mummified remains in Egypt than there are living people in Egypt today, right? So this has been going on for thousands of years. So they checked all these people who are just the normal people, and they found that no, they all had evidence of atherosclerosis. They all had evidence of these diseases, these metabolic diseases, and using stable isotope technology to see exactly what these people were eating, they found they were all eating the same thing. They were all eating grains. So it wasn't meat. Again, it wasn't meat. And that's another thing too. 66% of animals are carnivores. They eat meat, they eat fat. And the rest of the animals, almost every herbivore, runs on fiber, and they break that fiber down into fat and protein. So all these animals are running on saturated fat and protein. None of them get heart disease if they're eating their biologically appropriate diet. They get outside of that, then they can start getting problems. And so why would we be the only animal on Earth that gets heart disease or diabetes from eating meat and fat? Why would we be the only ones? That doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah, you won't find any animal with diabetic lion.
No, exactly. Unless you start feeding them, things that are outside of their natural diet. Then dogs and cats, domesticated pets, they're getting a much higher prevalence of so-called human diseases like diabetes, like different heart conditions and arthritis and autoimmune issues as well. they're getting like dogs getting like lupus and things like that. I mean, like that's crazy. Like that's something that's never existed in the pet population until the last few decades. And now it's getting more and more and more prevalent, more and more so-called human diseases. And, that doesn't exist if they don't eat the wrong thing. And that's the same thing with us. It doesn't exist with us if we don't eat the wrong thing as well. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before people realize that and realize that we've been had, really.
Yeah, I think now there is a much more like it's becoming more mainstream to be even like a ketogenic. In the US, it's becoming more like popular. I know that Kim Kardashian, she said that she was a ketogenic, and you see it like in the mainstream media much more. But still, I think these people, many times they do like a processed ketogenic diet. So it's again, they eat like a lot of ketogenic snacks and stuff like that. But for me, it's like, as I said in the beginning, like when I ate that it's the ancestral food, as you say, it solved my also a condition that it's pretty complex to manage, and it's solved my my everyday hustle with this. Like I don't have to hustle so much again, no more. And so it's even after the body done damage to itself, still it does a lot to you. It gives a lot of relief in my life, and it's easy. And now you have people that their lifespan is high as a non-diabetic, that they've been low carb for many years. So it's also it can be the solution even after there's a big damage, like big damage was done, and it can be the preventive. So it makes a lot of sense that if you eat like your ancestral diet, so you will be good.
Yeah, and that sort of raises the question of you're studying clinical nutritionist. What are they teaching you? Is it very plant based like other nutrition courses?
Yeah, they go a lot to the mainstream. I enjoy what you probably studied the same as a medical doctor. Like I enjoyed a lot of anatomy, and everything that will be always kind of true. It's like an everlasting truth. But then when they get to the part of like the guidelines, so yeah, it's a lot of plant based. It's a lot. Today in Israel, they talk a lot about the Mediterranean diet that no one actually knows what's the exact definition of that. Yeah. But they talk a lot about that and the gaps, and they try to go like with still to the mainstream, but it's not. Maybe like 10% of my lectures they talk about ketogenic diet as an option, and they know like for diabetes especially, yeah. So they know like
that, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is some awareness, but if you say like the bulk of what I learned, so it's to go more to like the official guidelines today.
Yeah, well, it's good that they're at least sort of recognizing the advantages of a ketogenic diet, and at least having it in the toolbox of like this is how you sort of can help people with it. I will grow, because you can help so many more issues than just diabetes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, for me, it sounds like it's sometimes I can't believe that I have to study in order to tell people what to eat, because everything that we talked about until this moment, that just there is these people that they just know from father to son, like just generations over generations. They just know. It's like so I can tell people, I can tell them, look, I was studying anatomy, physiology. It's all good, but then it's like still maybe some wise guy, from some tribe, he will know so much more than me.
Yeah. And also it's just like, well, how can you can't say that, you can't make those claims. You're not a nutritionist. And it's just like, well, nutritionists just know what they're being taught, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. That
exactly.
To authority, and you're saying that you're not allowed to voice an opinion, you're not allowed to present evidence because you don't have a degree. I mean, that's a bit nonsensical, because what you're saying needs to be taken on its own merits. It doesn't matter. So that's an ad hominem, right? So you're saying you're not a nutritionist, therefore what you're saying is wrong. No, that's not the case. What you're saying may or may not be wrong, but it has nothing to do with you being a nutritionist. And
exactly,
I think that it's sort of indicative of the fact that people had to be diverted from what they knew to be true and what people had just passed down from generation to generation to generation. Hey, this is the healthiest stuff to eat. This is what we should do. This is what you do best on, which is just, meat and fat and butter and things like that. It took a whole field of dietetics to then change that and brainwash people and go, no. Everything you've been doing your whole life and generationally and everything your parents and grandparents told you, all wrong, totally wrong. Yeah. They're just idiots. They don't know better. We are dietitians. Well, they're self-proclaimed acolytes, and they're as Thomas Sowell says, the self-anointed elite. They've decided that they are the elite. I am a nutritionist, whatever. I know sorts of things. Says who? Honestly, the same people in your cult that are just telling each other they're all good at what they do, but it doesn't line up with the evidence. It doesn't line up with reality, and it doesn't line up with the historical facts and prehistorical realities of how we used to eat and how we can benefit from that. But it is funny that you have to get a degree in dietetics to then go completely against it. You're going to be just like, great, get this degree, and I'm going to just ignore everything that I was taught. But you have to have that degree. You have to have that title to then for people to take you seriously. Hey, I study nutrition. I have a degree in nutrition. I am a nutritionist. Yeah. This is what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah, I went to that because I want to help people. And what's special about me, and I think I may be like 2% of the people that study with me, that I come from the field of just come over some disease like that so almost no one can say that. And then when I say that, so it's like, okay, I can pass it on, but and the degree will be only like the tool to do it. It's not, I don't need a degree in order to, I know diabetes much more than, I will tell you, like with a confidence much more than a lot of doctors. I know diabetes and I can help a lot of diabetics, and that's the goal here. And then we get to this dangerous kind of situation that you're absolutely right. I agree with you that today there is like a tendency to go more and more to this position that people say, oh, you're not a doctor, we will not listen to you. You don't have this degree. And we saw it a lot in the COVID times, when the COVID was in the highest rates. So we saw it, that people saying on the news, but wait, who are you to tell us if we should do stuff or not? You're not a doctor. And then I think it's a dangerous path to go, because it's exactly what the Western people, they went and they done to the native people of doesn't matter, America or in Australia. They came and told them, as you said, they told them, that's what you're eating? No, we will show you how to do it. And then they got all of the Western diseases. And why forward? Like,
yeah, and they only got worse, and you can look at that through that historical lens as well, that they were much more healthy and lived much longer before they started eating the way we do. And and I think that's a direct relationship. You were saying that you're not allowed to comment, well, you're not a doctor or you're not a nutritionist, or even I, who've I studied nutrition. I took college courses in nutrition. I took biochemistry, which is, the biochemistry is just studying how your body works and how nutrition is. I mean, that's the hard science of nutrition and how it works in your body, how these molecules work in your body, and how you mobilize energy and all the different sorts of mechanisms that your body uses in those processes. So that is studying nutrition, really. And I've also taken just straight up nutrition classes, and I've studied all these things independently as well. But people say, well, he's not a nutritionist. How can you talk about nutrition? He's not a nutritionist. I'm like, well, because I've studied nutrition, and that's why. And I'm right, and I can back it up and I can prove it. And if you disagree, tell me why, and we'll talk about it. And that's totally fine. I actually enjoy those conversations. I'm very interested in having these conversations, and or some medical issue or something like that. Well, you're not a doctor or this and that. But there's always like a escape out of that, because it doesn't matter if you're a doctor. It says like, oh, well, you're not a doctor, you can't say that. And I'll say, okay, well, I'm a doctor and I treat this, and so I'm agreeing with that. You're just a quack. You're just full of it. You're just one of those whatever. There's always an excuse. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to listen to it, so they make an excuse. This is what the definition of ad hominem is. They want to take your argument on its merit. And so
true.
you're not allowed to make the argument because you're disqualified for whatever reason. You're not a doctor. Okay, well, you are a doctor, but you're a kook, you're a this, you're a liar, you're paid by some company or something like that. Okay, what's your evidence for that? Do you have any? And who are you as a layman to then say, well, you need to be an expert, and then say to that expert, no, you're just a crook or something like that. So it's a bit it's a bit frightening to what lengths people will go to defend their ideologies.
Yeah, but true. Ad hominem, it's the most, it's the oldest trick in the book. Like if I want, they do it a lot in politics. If I want to shut you up, so I will tell you, no, but I know that you're a fraud. Like it's not. I ask you a serious question about nutrition, so don't tell me I'm a fraud. Let's talk about the subject, and we see it all the time. And I think that's just sometimes you can defend against that when you have like. You come from, I myself, I'm a person that came from the field. I saw diabetes all my life. I worked with diabetics. I will work with diabetics. So, and you can say the same like about your clinical background. So you can tell, I think you can't argue with results. Like people can't argue if you tell people, look, I put all of these people on carnivore diet or on a low carb, doesn't matter. And look what happened. Like with that, you can't argue.
Yeah, exactly. It's like in sports when you always have like a back and forth with the other team. Oh, you guys suck. You're this, you're that. But like you won the game, you just point at scoreboard. You just like scoreboard. Yeah. And that's what you say. And it just infuriates. You guys suck. You're this, you're that. Scoreboard.
Yeah, true. It's like trash talk.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like you can't talk trash about the results. Like we won, you lost. So if you're saying that we suck, what does that make you? You're worse. So
exactly. That's what annoys these people, and that's why they go to ad hominem, because it's their only weapon that left.
That's it. Yeah. So if you don't have an argument, you have to distract from the argument. You have to take away from the argument. You're not allowed to make the argument. And that's why these things, you call someone names, you call them racist, sexist, homophobe, whatever. And so you're not allowed to make this argument because you're a bad person. And so, as Thomas Sowell, there's a good quote from him that said, nowadays when people disagree, they don't just think that you're in error, but in sin. You're a racist or a homophobe or whatever, the bad person of the day is. And, so it's not a disagreement on a factual basis or an intellectual basis. It's a moral condemnation about the other person and say, you disagree with me there. It's because you're a bad person. Like you couldn't possibly actually disagree with me for any real reasons. It's because you are a bad person that you're lying and you're making this up and you're trying to manipulate people. That's really lazy thinking. And it's really lazy debating, maybe true cases. There are idiots and racists out there, but like the vast majority of these interactions are not going to be derived on that. The vast majority of people disagreeing are going to be honest disagreements. They just see things differently. That was another thing that Thomas Sowell said. He said that, that we need to understand, I think this is a very good working definition of being open-minded, is that two people can look at the same piece of evidence and intelligently and honestly come to different conclusions. And we need to recognize that because we all have different backgrounds. We all have different influences. We all have different, levels of education or understanding in a particular subject. And so when we see a situation like that, we're going to have all of those influences come to bear. So we're going to interpret that exact same thing differently. And it can be done intelligently and honestly. It doesn't have to be dishonest and deceitful or idiotic. It's just, people get to disagree, and that's actually very healthy. The only situation you'll ever find where people agree on absolutely everything is in a cult, and that's not where I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that's the definition of science, is actually to debate about what you think is not True. Like that's how science works. If it's shutting mouths all day long, like you're not this, you're not qualified to talk about this. So it's the death of science in this moment, because all the idea of science is like to question.
Yeah. And it should be questioned. Everything should be questioned.
Yeah.
You can't question it. It's not science. It's dogma, right? And
exactly.
It's, so dogma is religion. It's something that should be questioned. If anybody says to you, no, this is it, game over, there's nothing to see here, that's when you should start asking some real serious, deep and probing questions, because they're trying to hide something. The truth defends itself. Good ideas stand on their own merits. And so, when I have people saying that you're full of it and here's why, then great. All right, let's talk about it, but normally they don't. Normally say, oh, you're just full of it. Okay, great. Why? How? And they don't have an answer. They just know that they hate me for having my viewpoints, and they don't have any evidence. They just know I'm wrong, even though they can't.
They don't want to debate.
No, and they don't even know how. They don't have any evidence, right? And so it's different from what their mother told them. And so obviously I'm a crook, And so, anytime you get into a situation where someone says, this is it, it's settled science, no one disagrees, like we're just not talking about this anymore, they're hiding something, right? I'm happy to talk about this with anybody. I've had multiple, literally thousands of conversations about it long before I started my YouTube channel and my podcast. I would meet people all the time, and sometimes it'd be like 2 or 3 people a day, every day, that I meet at the hospital or when I was out or something like that. It would just come up, and like they'd see me eating, like, Jesus, that's a lot of eggs. You get a lot of protein there, It's just like, well, I just don't eat anything else. I'm like, what do you mean you don't eat anything else? Like, and it just goes on like that. And then they just like, wait, hold on a second. And they just they keep asking. And so they challenge all these things, and I'm happy to talk to them. So I literally give these spiels like 2-3 times a day for like literally years. And I was happy to, I was happy, and I came across a lot of vegans and a lot of vegetarians, and we, went at it. Some people were more upset. Oh, well, but how can it be? And this, that, and the other. Most of them were very reasonable, and everyone was just hold on a second, that can't be. And we just had a discussion about it, and and we were able to convince all of them. Really, I haven't had a single example where we've been able to actually sit down and communicate. If they've been willing to communicate, that I haven't been able to have them see my side of things. But that's what it's supposed to be. You can't just say, no, that's not it. Oh, you're a bad person. You can't say that because you're this, you're that, you're a this denier or that denier, which is horribly, which is a horrible thing to say, and it's just ridiculous. Like, you have to be able to discuss these things. And so, and the good ideas will stand on their own merits. If you have to protect an idea, if you have to make it illegal to debate or go against that idea, it's a bad idea, because otherwise it would be able to stand on its own.
Yeah, true.
All right. Well, just looking at the time here, it's very, very great to talk to you again and have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out. Can you tell us where you can find you and find all your online happenings?
Yeah, today my English website, it's tomerpappe.com, and I recently done the podcast with you and with Brian Sanders, and it's called the Normal Blood Glucose podcast. I have it on YouTube, everywhere, Spotify. Just if people will Google Tomer Pappe, they will get to it.
Perfect. Great.
And had a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, me too. And I'll put all those links up on the description as well. And great. And so everyone, if you enjoyed this, please send this to people who you think would also enjoy it or would benefit from hearing it. And everyone, please like and subscribe. It really, really helps out, and leave a comment. That's very, very helpful to the algorithm. So thank you all very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.